The letter arrived folded and stamped with the HOA's official seal, slipped under my cabin door like a knife in the dark. I tore it open and froze, reading the words over and over until the paper crumpled in my fists. You are hereby ordered to sell your cabin property to the Homeowners Association for community redevelopment. Failure to comply will result in daily fines and enforcement action. Signed in oversized, loopy ink, Karen's name. My heart thudded. This wasn't just a threat about my shutters or another ridiculous fine for stacking wood by the porch. This was a direct command to surrender the land my grandfather built with his own hands, the cabin where my family gathered every Christmas, the ground where our history was carved deeper than the roots of the pines that surrounded it. And behind it all, I could see Karen's smug face, that bloated mask of authority she wore like armor, convinced she owned every breath we took inside this neighborhood. I stormed out to the porch, still clutching the paper, and there she was, as if summoned by rage itself. Karen stood in the gravel drive with 2 board members trailing behind like obedient dogs, her bulk framed by the afternoon sun. She waved her clipboard high, her voice carrying like a town crier. This cabin is being repurposed for community benefit. The board voted unanimously you are required to vacate within 30 days. Her eyes glittered with triumph, as though she had already imagined the bulldozers tearing down my walls and paving the land for her vision of a luxury lodge. I stepped down the porch steps slowly, my voice low but sharp. You don't have the power to force me off this land. This cabin predates your HOA by 50 years. My deed is ironclad. Karen laughed, a grating sound that set neighbors' teeth on edge as they peeked from their porches. Your deed means nothing when the community demands progress. And the community is me. Either you sell or you drown in fines. She shoved the clipboard toward me, pin dangling, as if I would just sign my heritage away. Instead, I pulled out my phone, held up the letter, and started recording. This is extortion, I said clearly, letting the camera catch every line on her face. You're abusing your title to steal private property. Her grin faltered, but only for a heartbeat. Then she leaned closer, her perfume cloying, her whisper venomous. Go ahead. Record. By the time you're done, you'll be bankrupt, and this cabin will be mine. The fury boiled in me, but so did something else, resolve. What Karen didn't know was that I had been preparing for a fight like this for months. I owned not just my cabin, but also the land beneath the HOA's leased community hall and rental storage sheds. It was a quiet inheritance my family left me, deeds tucked away until I realized the HOA had been paying rent on property they didn't even know belonged to me. And now, with one threat too many, Karen had given me the reason to bring it all to light. That evening, as the sun sank behind the ridge, I marched into the HOA meeting uninvited, the air thick with Karen's voice as she boasted about her redevelopment plans. I waited until she was mid-sentence, then slammed the stack of deeds onto the table. The crowd fell silent. Funny thing, Karen, I said, my words echoing in the wooden hall. You want me to sell my cabin, but you've been renting from me all along. This hall, these storage units, they're mine. And as of tonight, your rent is tripled. Gasps spread like wildfire. Karen's face turned crimson, her jaw quivering. Lies. That's impossible, she screeched, but I slid the papers across the table, each seal and signature undeniable. Neighbors craned their necks to see, murmurs rising into angry shouts not at me, but at her. They realized she had been threatening them with fines, while the very ground she held meetings on wasn't even hers to command. Her control cracked like glass under a hammer, and the room began to shift, power tilting away from her. She tried to shout over them, waving her arms, but the truth was louder. I caught her eye, my voice steady. You order me to sell. Now I'm ordering you to pay. Or you can vacate. Karen stumbled back a step, her bulk shaking as the crowd erupted into chaos. For the first time, I saw fear flash across her face, and I knew the war she started was about to consume her whole. The silence after my words was like thunder waiting to break. Karen's face flushed beet red, sweat beading under her powdered cheeks as she snatched the papers from the table, scanning them with shaking hands. She stammered, her voice cracking. These are forged. He's lying. This is some kind of trick. But her board members leaned over her shoulder, their eyes widening as they read the seals and signatures. They weren't forged. They were real, older than Karen's entire HOA charter, older than her delusions of power. The neighbors began to murmur louder. One man stood up, voice trembling with anger. "So you've been threatening to fine us, but you didn't even own the ground under your own office." Another woman added, "All those fees we paid, all those meetings we were paying him rent through you?" The crowd swelled with outrage, a tidal wave that Karen couldn't control. She pounded her fist on the table, her jowls shaking. "Quiet. I am your president. You obey me." But her words rang hollow now, stripped of authority. She had demanded my cabin, and in return, I had pulled the floor out from beneath her entire empire. The sheriff arrived not long after, called by nervous neighbors who thought the shouting might turn violent. He entered the hall, tipping his hat, his eyes scanning the heated crowd. When he saw the deeds spread across the table, Karen's face purple with rage, and my calm stance in the center, he asked simply, "What's going on here?" I handed him the documents. Karen tried to force me to sell my cabin. But as it turns out, she's been renting her HOA headquarters and storage lots from me for years without realizing it. As of tonight, her rent is tripled. If they don't pay, they're trespassing. The sheriff studied the papers carefully, then looked up, his gaze landing on Karen. "These are legit. You've been bluffing on land that doesn't belong to you. And now it looks like you're the one in violation." Karen shrieked, lunging toward him. "No, I'm in charge. You can't let him do this." But the sheriff stepped back calmly, his voice even. "Karen, you're not in charge of the law. And the law says he's right." The room erupted in cheers, neighbors clapping, whistling, some even chanting. No more Karen. But Karen wasn't done. The next morning, she stormed onto my property with a megaphone, screaming at the top of her lungs that I was a fraud, that the deeds were fake, that no one should pay me a dime. She dragged folding chairs and set them in the gravel, rallying the last of her loyalists like a general before a crumbling army. Yet as she raged, deputies pulled up once more, this time with eviction notices for the HOA's use of my land. Watching her tear the papers into shreds and hurl them into the wind was almost comical if not for the raw hatred in her eyes. The twist came when her own treasurer, Leonard, finally broke his silence. Standing on the steps of the courthouse, he admitted to the press that Karen had hidden years of financial mismanagement, funneling HOA dues into vanity projects and even her personal spa weekends. She wanted his cabin, he confessed, his voice shaking but resolute, because she needed to cover the debt she created. She thought seizing his land would save her, but it only exposed her. That revelation was the nail in her coffin. By the time Karen was dragged into court, she looked nothing like the queen of the neighborhood she once pretended to be. The judge listened as neighbors testified against her, as bank records were displayed showing embezzlement, as video clips played of her demanding I surrender my home. When it was my turn, I stood tall and told the truth plainly. This cabin was my grandfather's. She tried to take it, but the thing about bullies is they always overreach. And when they do, they fall. The gavel struck, and Karen was ordered to repay every misused cent, stripped of any authority in the community, and banned from holding office in any association again. She screamed, clawed at the air as deputies pulled her away, but her words had no weight anymore. The courtroom's applause drowned her out. She was finished. The HOA dissolved in the months that followed, its debts too steep to survive. In its place, the neighbors formed a cooperative council, not one run by fear, but by trust. Families finally planted gardens without fines. Kids rode bikes down the gravel road without being scolded. And every month, when the new rent checks from the old HOA facilities arrived at my cabin, I donated part of it to maintain our trails and preserve the woods my grandfather once protected. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the ridge, my wife joined me on the porch. She sipped her coffee, watching neighbors laugh around a communal fire pit, children chasing each other with sparklers. "Feels different now," she said softly. I nodded, staring at the cabin's weathered wood, at the land we nearly lost. Karen thought she could steal it. Instead, she made it stronger. The mural painted on the side of the old HOA hall said it all. A cabin standing firm against a storm, roots sinking deep into the earth. The words "what stands on truth cannot be moved" painted above. Every time I see it, I remember the night I faced Karen's demand and flipped her empire upside down. And I'll ask you this. When someone like Karen pushes too far, trying to steal what isn't theirs, should we bow to keep the peace or rise to fight back, no matter the cost? Was I right to turn her attack into her undoing? Or should I have walked away quietly? Tell me, was I right or wrong?